Yeah, okay. But we're trying to keep this to about an hour today, and then if you're available to stay on a bit longer and have questions, I'm always here for a half hour after that. Would love to connect with some of you where I've just been going back and forth over email. But for those of you who haven't directly met me, I'm Danielle Williams. I'm the Northeast rep, and thank you for making today's call a priority. This call, the idea with the roundtables is we've been shifting towards this regional topic focused format. And what I would really like for you all to get out of this call is to have some nuggets of information to bring back, maybe some solutions and perspective. So what I've been doing over the past couple of calls is bringing on a guest speaker. So with that said, I'm going to introduce you to Daniel, of course, and his team, but also I want to make this interactive. So if you do have questions along the way, the idea is I want to bring his experience and what he's done and have him present that to you. And then we can ask questions. And I'm also prepared to guide the conversation as well if no one has questions. And these calls are here for you guys to find value and also for us all to connect. But with that said, Daniel Davidson, he first affiliated in 2012, has up to 3 locations in the Philadelphia area, and back in 2020 he also founded the Community Fitness Collective, which consists of 12 gyms where he sets up licensing agreements with those gyms outside of CrossFit, which is really designed to support the gym operations. So my point, Daniel brings a lot of experience on the back end when it comes to the sales and operations. And he also has had a couple youth programs that he runs across his gyms as well. He's brought on his team, both Betsy Engel on this call and Wendy Wilson, who can also chime in and be resources. What I'd like you guys to do, if you're interested in sharing your information as we go along, just put your name and affiliate along with whether it's an email address or number in the chat box. And I'm just going to hand the baton to Daniel.
Great. Thank you very much, Danielle. So we'll go over introductions in a minute, introduce you to Betsy and Wendy and myself and who we are. But a couple expectations from today and the points that we're presenting from. So ask questions along the way. So we built out a presentation based on our professional experiences, what we've actually experienced in the market over the last couple years, post-COVID and pre-COVID. So these are real metrics that we're going to show you guys today that we operate and manage kids programs from. All right. We also present from one of our most important core values, which is you're not allowed to have a problem without a solution. So you'll notice that in today's presentation, we talk about what the problem was and what the solution we found that worked. Because we believe that if you come to the table with problem after problem and no solutions, then you're drama. And we know that can affect the team and affect the community. And then finally, the presentation and the documents are available in the chat now. So you can click on that link right now and you can view this presentation just like I am. If you want to skip ahead, get your questions ready, but you'll also find our contact information in there. Great. And Danielle, if you could man the chat, if anybody has any questions, you can just chime in.
That's okay. Yep.
So introductions on, I'm Daniel Davidson. We've got Betsy Ingles on this call. Betsy's our COO. She helps manage all the operations of the gym from a back end perspective. So she isn't visible. She isn't client facing to the customers. She is the support structure for our managing partners and for our youth director, Wendy, which is also on this call. The Community Fitness Collective, we own and manage 10 affiliates up and down the East Coast, out in the Atlantic and the Caribbean. The ones that we wholly own are CrossFit Mainline facilities. And what we do in the CF Collective is that we focus on exit strategies by increase evaluations. So most of us gym owners get into this field because we want to add value. And then we realize real quick, wait a minute, we've got responsibilities and liabilities. And one day we will have to exit, right? So that's what we do is we help these affiliate owners create exit strategies and increase their valuations. We do this by grouping affiliates together. So we launch these kids programs in grouped affiliates of 5 to 6, and we provide them the systems like these kids programs to help improve operations, which lowers cost. All right. At our peak, our kids program had 170 kids in it across only 2 locations, and we were grossing 40K plus per season, and our minds were blown. It was way too much for us to manage. Currently, we are at 70 kids plus a high ticket performance program, which we'll talk about, and our team is much happier and it's much more manageable. So today we'll talk about those problems or roadblocks and the solutions, and we've phased this into 3 steps. Step number 1 is going to be creating the foundation. And we'll talk about appropriate schedules, your team organizational chart and compensation structures that we currently use and what we found works in other organizations, as well as what appropriate financials look like for a kids program. Then we'll layer on top growth expectations. So we'll talk about the client relationship management system, also lead generation, and then growth rate management. How fast should you grow? And then finally, we'll layer on top the client life cycle, starting with a lead and walking them through a trial versus evaluations to get them started into class. And then into a prospect, do we sell them a recurring versus a seasonal membership and what we have found successful? And then finally, as a client, what does their programming and what group ages are successful? So the first one we're going to chat about is the schedule. And ask questions as we go through this. We found that the first thing to look at is your local schools. So finding out when your local schools get out of class and also when their holidays are. That's going to help you figure out your space and constraints, because we find success in doing this as a supplemental thing, not in its own independent space. And we're going to show you the metrics for both of those today. But it's going to help you figure out, based on if the kids get out of class at 3:30, when they can actually make it to the gym and when classes need to be over with, so that you can maximize the occupancy in your space as adult classes come into the evening. And then also what constraints you have. So do you not only have schedule constraints, but do you have equipment constraints? Go ahead. Nope. And then again, shared versus standalone. And we talked about how we're going to show you the metrics for that. And what we mean by is a shared space with adult classes going on in it, and then a standalone space that is solely and only occupied by a youth program. So when you take a look at your schedule, first take a look at the schools, figure out when they get out and when their holidays are, and then layer in what your space constraints are. Your space and constraints are based on the adult or shared space that you're going into, or if you're going to have more availability because you have a standalone space. When you take a look at team and compensation, we can click over and you'll notice here, guys, these emojis are here, or these icons here, are to let you know there's links listed to these role descriptions, which you can click through and access. But our organizational chart looks like a youth director, which is Wendy, who manages 90% of the gym, or 90% of the program and communication to the parents and coaches. And then we have 2 head coaches underneath them, a performance head coach, and then we have a CrossFit Kids head coach. And then we have part-time coaches that are underneath them, and we call them bench coaches because we pull them off the bench. And if we click through and you guys take a look at the youth director role description, you can kick through and you can see what salaries look like and what the expectations and qualifications are for them and what we offer in an successful full-time youth. So if you have a standalone facility, which we have had and operated, what we actually put out there for the role description to hire based on. And Betsy, I'm going to let you speak to this and any points that need to stand out to the attendees, people watching today.
Sure. So anytime that we hire anyone for any position, we have a role description that we pull up. And in the initial interview, we want to get basically agreements that this is what they're looking for, so that there's alignment in what they want professionally and what we have available. So we run through this with them, and it has pretty much everything what our requirements are, what compensation expectations are. And that's honestly the first place that we get buy-in from them, because the last thing we want is someone coming to us asking for more money or feeling unclear about how compensation was laid out. We do have, if it's a full-time team member, we obviously have benefits that we offer them. Then it's really important that we set up I want to say chain of command, but it's really like, who do you go to for what on our team? Because our team is pretty expansive. So who would they report to? Chief of staff and the managing partner at their facility. So the layout or org chart that Daniel just showed you is just for this program. And then it expands more because of our multiple facilities and sort of like HQ setup. So Wendy, who is on this call, is our director, youth director. She would go to me if she needs help, or she would go to the managing partner at the location for the adult program. So for schedule, she would work directly with them at their location. So it's important she knows who to talk to. And then we drop it into results, general responsibilities, and off the floor responsibilities. And you're going to notice 3 tiers. We always focus on serve community, grow professionally, and grow youth. And then what the expectations are and the metrics that we're measuring for the person coming into this role, so that we can follow up with them and be like, hey, here's what we all agreed on that the expectations were. Let's talk about some of these. Where do you need support? How are things going? Or, hey, this isn't getting hit. What do we need to change? What solutions or ideas do you have? So really this role description is set expectations and then to be a guide to revisit so everyone is aligned.
Great, thanks, Betsy. And we've got listed out there for the youth director, and then we also have the head coach role description built into here too. And you can see, and you're going to find a lot of similarities. And then also our performance program, which we have Parisi affiliates across our locations that we find success with.
You too. Bye-bye.
Questions? Nope. Great. So compensation. We've probably done it all wrong and changed it a million times to get to where we are today. Just like most of us that have owned affiliates. So we got 2 different spaces we're looking at here. One's going to be the standalone and one's going to be the shared space. Let's start over at the shared space. So if we're operating in a shared space, the positions that we offer are going to be part-time employment. And we find that the youth director is going to make 20% of the gross is really successful. So paying them off the top line revenue that they draw in. They don't get paid per class. They don't get anything after that. They just get flat 20% of the gross revenue. We then can have a performance head coach and a CrossFit Kids head coach in there that get hourly plus a sales commission. And we find successful that we pay them $30 an hour, and then we pay them $50 per close that they make. So if they have a trial, which we'll talk about our process of that, come into class, and then they sell that person afterwards, because it's important we have everyone can be able to sell, then they get paid an additional on top of that. And then of course the bench coaches below. In our category of bench coaches, the majority of those are trade work. So those are ones that what they really value is just being called coach, is what we found over the years. And so we require that they coach 2 classes a week, adult or kids, and that trades for their $200+ membership that they get with us. As far as full-time, we have seen success paying youth directors up to 80% of the nets, right? That's a lot of money when it comes into them, but it drives them to grow that program. It is challenging because the nets become sticky, and you need to really clarify what you're placing in there. If they go and buy jump ropes, well, that takes away from the nets that month, right? Their utility bill is higher, that takes away from the nets that month. And then the performance head coach and the CrossFit Kids head coach, we find that in this standalone model that we pay them a salary, and then we pay them 1% of the gross revenue as a bonus structure every single month. That encourages them to not only sell memberships into it, but also sell access to other things, whether we have a competition or an event or even apparel at times, because we do find that as a company, we set our goals differently based on the season. So for instance, one season coming in September, October, November, December, and even through Q1, our goals will be set on recurring growth, recurring membership growth, and they will get bonus because we'll add memberships in there. Whereas over the summer, leads begin to slow down, the quality of leads slows down, and people begin to push off signing up because of vacations. And we find successful that we drive more towards gross revenue or even just flat out lead generation. How many leads can they generate and put in their back pockets to get ready for Q4, Q1? So 1% of the growth tends to drive those. And then again, you're supported by your part-time and bench coaches. So here's what the finances that we find from our experience operating these look like. And again, we're looking at two different categories, the standalone, and we're looking at the shared space. We've got annual revenue listed here for you, and this is youth only. If we're looking at a standalone facility, we typically will operate youth revenue at around $240,000 a year in a standalone facility. But our expenses are going to be much greater than they are in a shared. So up to 30% on rent is okay to operate by. Hitting your payroll at around 25% is okay to operate by. And those two can be fluctuated around 50 to 55%, and the percentages of these can go up and down. But a combined is what we like to see in a facility when we partner with them or purchase them, is anywhere from 50 to 55% of payroll. An equipment budget of around $6,000 to get started in there, and then nets, utilities, CAM, ad expense we're throwing in there. We'll talk about that in a minute, of around 25 too. So when we total calculate out nets, you're looking at about $6,400 a month coming back in nets to the company on a standalone facility. When we go over to a shared facility, we can see that the revenue is going to drop dramatically. So we're seeing it 68,000, but so does our payroll and equipment. All right. And we're going to see around $4,000 a month. So the difference is only a couple $1,000s a month from a shared to a standalone facility. And we'll see the pros and cons labeled out here that we've found. Obviously, in standalone, you're going to have more revenue. You're going to create career opportunities for athletes or for coaches in there, and you're going to be able to impact more lives. But you do have more stress that's going to be related to managing and leading that team, more time. You're going to have minimum occupancy of the space, which in the fitness industry, we're all trying to maximize the time we occupy it. Typically, only kids are going to occupy it from after school till around 7:30 at night. So you're really going to have to make your money in about 4 hours at night. And then there's more financial risk because of income instability based on kids' other activities. So they may come in and they may attend for 2-3 months while they're not in one sport, and then they'll drop off, right? Or they'll come in our high ticket price and they'll spend $400 or $500 a month for 2 or 3 or 4 months to get in small group training for sports performance, but then they'll drop off during the season. So your income stability is much higher. The pros of in a shared space are you're able to keep the main thing, right? And your main thing is adult recurring revenue, because that's what pays the bills and that's what creates careers for people, because adults are much more stable in their attendance and what they have going on in their life over the course of a year. Because of that, there's way less stress and time on you as a leader of the facility, and there's less risk because you don't have another space that you're probably personally guaranteeing the lease based on your other rent, or taking away from being able to grow your adult program. You are going to have additional revenue added in there, and you're going to maximize your space usage. So typically in our industry, we're all fighting for the same amount of time: early morning, maybe in the middle of the day, and then in the evening, right? We're able to layer in kids more into the evening and into the weekend to maximize space use. But the negative is less revenue. So you're just going to have to weigh what is important to you as you consider a youth program. So growth expectations, the second tier. here. Client relationship management. The coach is going to be communicating and selling the parent on the program, which is then going to involve the child. So it's important that the coach you choose has product knowledge on the kids program. So having a bench coach do this or a part-time coach do this may not be ideal. The reason why Wendy's so successful at closing kids into the program and keeping them a long time is because she's continually communicating over to the parent, and she leads the discussion as the main point of contact. I would never step in and communicate to them, or our managing partners at the facility. They would always direct it over to Wendy. Wendy, I'm going to let you speak to communicating to parents and the importance of that and what you do to pre-qualify them during your initial conversations.
Sure. So one, like Daniel just said, the biggest thing is maintaining contact. One of the things that I found early on is that kids' schedules change a lot and very often. And so in the initial meeting with the parent, I make sure that we establish that communication connection where I say to them, like, I will stay in contact with you when the schedules change, when other things change, new opportunities come out, keeping track of, their membership, stuff like that in Wodify. And then they just need to continue to stay in contact with me when things are changing for them. I have had very few, if any, clients that came back and were completely irate that something happened and they did not know about it. And that is because of the constant communication. And how I do that is two ways. And maybe Betsy's going to speak to this, but we're actually changing systems a little bit. It used to just simply be through email, and I would set up distribution lists, and I would run a report from Wodify or from whatever managing system you use before the next billing cycle for every time, and I would take a look at it. And again, as Daniel stated, because I am the director, I closed all of those people. I know exactly who they are. I know exactly what the conversation was, and I know exactly where they need to be for the next billing cycle. And if I can't remember, I have it written down somewhere. So I at least have access to it. I do not have a memory like an elephant, I promise. But I have all of that information to check that, so that when the next billing goes through, I'm confident that it's accurate and there's not going to be any problems or anything coming back from parents concerned about anything. And that is also one of the things I don't think I heard Daniel say it, is I tell the parents from the start, you have to email me. It has to be in writing. And that's not because I'm trying to be, restrictive. It's because I am going to forget. So I need to have a record of it somewhere. Just saying, hey, just tell me at the gym tomorrow, you're going to forget. I would forget. So I tell them that they have to send it to me in an email. And I will say that in the conversation at the gym too. If they tell me something, I'm like, that's great, we can take care of that. You need to send me an email when you get home. So I would just say making sure that you're keeping that out, that they know how to communicate with you. There have been times with my teens, not the younger kids, but with the teens, that I have also used other apps like GroupMe or Team whatever, and I will have all of the current parent numbers in there because emergencies happen. And if you're headed to the gym or a coach emails me, we have a system set up that our coaches know who to contact if they suddenly can't coach and we have to get a class covered. I then have a quick way to text out, hey, we have, coach is sick today, we can't have class, and the parents get it right away, rather than just going straight to their email. But that's all dependent upon the size of your program and how many kids you have. Like Daniel mentioned at the beginning, with 170 kids, that's not possible. That's a lot more challenging. You have to have a little bit of a different system. With 70 kids, I can manage it very easily, and I dedicate a certain day of the week or a certain day of the cycle. Like I say, if the billing cycle is going to go through this Thursday, by Monday, I'm starting to double check my lists. I'm starting to double check memberships. I'm checking attendance. Who hasn't been there? I reach out to that parent and be like, hey, we haven't seen Johnny in, a couple weeks. Everything okay? What's going on? Let me know what's happening. That's a little bit of the teacher in me. I am a teacher. So parent communication is kind of something I'm pretty good at. I don't know, Daniel, did that provide what you were looking for?
That was great. As you guys can tell, it's much more involved than adults, right? Much more involved than adults. So Having someone dedicated that is not you is the big win. That's what you need. So I would suggest, from our professional experience, if you are leading the adult program, you are the leader in this. You don't lead a kids program. Don't do it, because you can't keep both balloons in the air. One will drop, and most likely it will be your adults, and the income is not as stable. So pick someone like Wendy that has those qualifications, and we're going to talk through that and make sure that they have the knowledge of it. I will say, give an example. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Danielle.
I was gonna say too, like, if you're on this call and maybe you have 50 clients and you're like a one man or woman shop too, there is a starting point. Like, if you look in the kids course, there are business resources, and you can find a template. It's a very basic letter to parents, just presenting your program. It's a touch point. And I know Daniel and his team probably have multiple touch points and someone like Wendy on it. But if you're feeling like a little overwhelmed and like, wow, I don't have this support, just know, like, start there in the kids manual for that initial touch point, and go from there. And it at least establishes communications with the parents, from the perspective of sales and retention. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure there's phenomenal stuff in there that'll help you get started. As far as lead generation, that email that she's suggesting in the template is a phenomenal resource to send out to your active adults, and that's where we would suggest starting here. Your clients that are in there love you, right? You're part of their fitness and health journey. They want nothing but the best for you, right? You increase rates by 50%, and they're probably all still going to be there because they want the best for you and your families. And so reaching out to them and gaining feedback or trying to coach their children first will help you build on the second tier, which is referrals. And as far as CrossFit Kids is concerned, we funnel that into a general physical class. And the athletes or clients that we're going after are typically ones that aren't playing a sport for a season, or maybe their parents think they need additional activity throughout the day, or maybe they're not getting that activity at school, right? And so their parents are trying to find them an outlet or an additional outlet. So going to those active adults that already know your programs and know what you do there is great. And then working on referrals. As far as paid ads go for lead generation, we find that paid ads do not work well for general fitness kids programs, right? They don't work well. Your cost per lead is going to be significantly over $16, which I put there in parentheses for you. Paid ads work exceptionally well for performance. And you'll see Betsy right there nodded, right? Like, because the funnel is packed and we have to turn them off, right? And if you need an agency to do that for you, email us. We'll put you in touch with Andy at Running Digital, and he just knows the demographic. He's got years of experience running them, and we see paid ads coming in for performance at $6 a lead, and they're going to close at over $400 a month. So you have less kids and you're going to have a higher financial. They're going to pay more money per month to be there for you. Growth rates. How fast should you grow and when should you expand your classes? This is something that continually is a back and forth with Wendy and Betsy and our teams, because we all want to offer as much as possible to our clients, right? But in order to deliver the experience of CrossFit or CrossFit Kids to them, we need to make sure that the classes are at least 60% full, right? We find among adults and of kids that if you have a capacity of 10, making sure that you're averaging 60% or 6 people in that is going to be successful. And before you expand age groups, oversell that 10 to 12, right? I use the example with our team all the time of airlines, right? They oversell seats for a purpose. It's because people don't show up, right? Not every kid is going to show up to every class that you offer. So oversell by 20%, and that'll help you hit that 60%. And then once you hit that 60%, you can begin to consider different age groups that you're going to have. So start with your primary age group that you have most access to the clients, to the kids in from your active adults and referrals. and begin to add kids into that age group on the different ends of the spectrum. And once you hit a consistent 60% class fulfillment, then we say we're going to be layering in a different age group. And Wendy, I'm going to grab you once again to speak about these age groups, what we call them, and how we place them into those age groups from a CrossFit Kids perspective, but then also from a performance perspective, because they're different.
Yeah, so I was shaking my head. I know I had my video off when he talked about, growing and then expanding. That is exactly what happened. So when I first came in, I had teens from a teen program at my previous gym that had closed. And so I brought them with me. So when I first started, I had 10 teens to start with, and that was all I focused on. I simply tried to grow the teens out. And then what happens, going back to the lead generation, the number one referral is typically a sibling. It's a sibling, it's a neighbor, it's a cousin, it's somebody that they know in their daily lives. Because the kid has such a great time, they start talking about it, or the parent starts talking about how much their kid loves it, and then it just spreads like wildfire. So what happened was we had 10 teens in the one location, and it quickly grew to about 18. And I was only having 2 classes a week. And each class was having close to 12 or 14 kids per class. So that was when I sat down with the managing partner of that location, and I said, hey, I really need another class. I need another coach. I got to figure something out so that these kids have more options, because then the class size in each class would go down a little bit. So that's just within one age group, how we determined it. And honestly, that changes by season. I talked about how kids' schedules change a lot. In the summertime, we go down to a few fewer classes because there just aren't as many kids. We tried to keep the same classes at the beginning, and we were having lots of classes with no kids. So we got rid of some of those classes, and it funneled all the other kids back into one class. And now that class is now filled with 8. And the biggest thing I liked what Daniel said is that a class with 1 or 2 kids sounds like it's a great thing, but it's not, because it's awkward for the coach and it's awkward for the kid. The kids want to be with other kids. It sounds like it's one-on-one training, but they're actually going to get more out of it when there are models for them to look at. Somebody else can demo. Kids are at different levels. They're going to have a better time, especially if they're younger. A little bit older into the teens, it's not as big of a deal, but it's just not as cost effective versus what you're pulling in versus what you're paying your coach. When to grow age groups. So what happened was then the teens got so big, but it was because we didn't really have a younger group. So I had at one point in Ardmore, I had about 20 kids from 5 to 9, and I had about 20 kids from like 12 plus. So my 10-year-olds, my 10 and 11-year-olds weren't really old enough for the teen group, but they were too old for the younger group. And because taking them out of the younger age group wasn't gonna diminish the quality of that class, I then created that middle group. So right now we currently have a kids age group, which is 5 to 7, 5 to 8. And honestly, I actually have 3 3-year-olds who are phenomenal, and they are so much fun. And then I created this juniors group, which is more like 9 to 11, 10 to 11. And then I have the teens, which are still 12 plus. And the biggest thing I can say about the age groups is just be flexible, because if you have a teen who has a junior sibling, it's going to be easier for mom and dad if they're in the same class. So we're pretty flexible across that. Like if a junior wants to come to a kids group, that's fine. Kid wants to go to a juniors, it depends on how mature they are. The difference in programming is really, this is something that you learn in the kids class, the kids CrossFit class. The younger kids is more basic movements, game oriented, keeping it fun, and hitting 3 major things. Juniors, they're just barely starting to learn the barbell, but there's a lot more general strength. And then the teens is real, it's similar programming to adults, but geared more towards skill development. So I know I jumped into a whole bunch of information. There's 1,000 things running through my head that I could tell you, but the basic thing is start with the group that you're most comfortable with. If you are nervous about kids because you don't think you're a kids person, start with the teens. The teens are most like adults out of any of the groups of kids. Teens are also easier to elicit from schools and from programs in the area sometimes. And then from the teens, you will start to get, oh, well, hey, how young do you go? Can my younger son join? And then that's when you can start to develop referrals for those younger age groups.
Great. And as far as our performance is concerned, the age groups still exist. They're called something different, but based on their, and let's just use the word athleticism, based on their athleticism, how advanced they are, they go into the different groups. And what are those called, Wendy?
So we have Jumpstart, which is like 7 to 11. And then there's Elite, which is like 12 plus. And it's the same type of thing. It's really meant to keep the maturity level differently. You don't really want 7-year-olds hanging out with 16-year-olds from a maturity perspective. But if you have an 8-year-old who is like, we have a #1 ranked squash player in the world, this girl is athletic, then yes, she can train with a 16-year-old. She's going to be fine. So the age groups is meant to deter maturity. As far as, you know, safe spaces for that level of a kid, but there is crossover depending upon siblings and athleticism.
Good. How are you?
Great. All right. Might need to mute Christina there.
Hold on one second. Sorry.
There you go. All right. And finally, let's layer on here the client life cycle. So from lead to prospect to client. And the way that we define that is a lead is someone who just raises their hand and says, here's my phone number, contact me. I want to come in and I want to try it. A prospect is someone who's actually come in, attended their meeting and tried. And then a client is someone that's signed up with you. We find that there's 2 different approaches to getting leads to turn into prospects, right? And then clients. And we can either do a class trial with them or we can do an evaluation. Both we've had success with. The evaluation, the challenge that we find with that is that it is time consuming. It's going to require 1 hour per kid, one-on-one. Parisi has a phenomenal outline for that. And the closing ratios are unbelievable that we pull off of that, and the client values that we pull off of that. We're able to charge $75 for that 1 hour evaluation, and there's standard things, and they grade them based on that, and then it puts them into Jumpstart or Elite or Performance based on their grade. We just recently, as Wendy mentioned, we just recently switched over to trial classes, and it's because it was way too time consuming for us. So we take children, Wendy has the conversation with them, with the parent, we place them into the Jumpstart, Performance, or Elite program, for example, there, or a CrossFit Kids program, and they trial a class, and then we close them into different membership options, which moves them into a prospect when we talk to them about that. And we have 2 membership options that we have found success with. One is a seasonal membership. And what we mean by seasonal is that it rotates with the sports seasons, right? So if basketball season is 6 weeks, you're going to have a 6-week season on top of that, or soccer's 8 weeks, you're going to have an 8-week season. And it's to attract those kids that may just be playing soccer and not something else, and therefore they have freedom 2 days a week, right? Or ones that aren't playing at all. And the other option that we now have and we pursue is the recurring membership option. And they pay a set flat rate, just like your adults do, every single month. The reason we prefer that option is that it stabilizes cash flow. And the tricky part about finding a recurring membership for kids is you can't charge them what the adults pay. You can't charge them $200 a month to attend your programs because they just won't attend that frequently, maybe 1, maybe 2 times a week max. And so our price points coming in for a recurring kids program only are going to be between $75 and $85 a month. We find that that is successful. It's just low enough that the parents will pay it to have the option. So if soccer gets rained out or something gets canceled, they will pay $75 a month to have the option to bring their child 1 day a week or 2 days a week. Any more than that, then they'll feel the financial impact of it and they'll cancel that recurring membership part. With seasonal memberships, you will get an influx of cash like no other. And we have pulled seasons of $40,000 into our CrossFit Kids only, not even Performance Kids programs. And they come in for like 8 weeks or 6 weeks, and the cash flow is great, but then it dies off. So make sure that you choose your compensation based on that, right? And I would suggest picking recurring or seasonal based on where you want to start or what you have available, right? Or if you just only want to do it for the fall or the spring, and then you want to be off for the summer, right? And then as far as agent clients, we kind of jumped the gun here. We talked about age groups. Wendy chatted about that, and we also chatted about programming. One thing in additional to programming is Parisi, which is the #1 speed and program in the country. I mean, it's the one that the NFL, MLB, MLS, I mean, UFTA, they all use it, right, and program by it. For a really nominal fee, only a couple $100 a month, they have every sport you could possibly imagine pre-programmed out. And this isn't generic. This is they have someone hired full-time that does nothing but program for football, program for basketball, right? And they use Train Heroic, which some of you I'm sure use or know of, to have all this information in so the kids can log all of their stuff. And it really does help elevate your performance program. So if you're interested in doing a performance program, Parisi is around the same cost as a CrossFit affiliate annual, but you get so much more in a programming and marketing tools and, oh man, groups. And it's quite amazing what they actually offer. So our final observations for you to take away today and to continue on with some discussion here for the next 15 minutes is keep the main thing the main thing. It's the saying amongst our team, right? So whatever you choose to do, make sure it doesn't take away from your adult recurring revenue. Because if you try to focus on both or think you can focus on both, one will drop. One financially will drop. As far as the foundation is concerned, we consider kids a supplementary financial program. It is not something that we focus our time of our managing partner and the adult on, right? And that's due to the kids' schedule volatility, which affects the finances. And if you are looking for a director like Wendy to run this, we look in two areas. One, look for a teacher that has the passion for it, or look for an involved parent. And we've had both, right? We had an involved parent that had 3 young kids in those age groups, was a dedicated client of ours, and took on the kids program full time and did a phenomenal job with it. And then her kids aged out and she moved on, right? And then we were lucky enough to get involved with Wendy. Growth expectations. When we talk about lead generation, build your CrossFit kids from your current adult athletes and then work off of referrals. If you think you're going to jump into paid ads, it's most successful if you jump in on a performance paid ads. And currently we average $6 per lead that comes in and an average client value of over $400 a month when they come in. We'll top out around there, around $16. And I'll tell you that $16 is also the dollar figure that you would aim to max out at if you're doing paid ads for your adults as well. Growth, aim for that 60% capacity and oversell it by 20% before you start dipping into age groups. And the client journey from lead to prospect to client life cycle, have a director that owns the CRM so that you can keep the main thing the main thing. All right. Make your choice on whether you're going to go trial class or recurring. If you're going to do this part-time, we find success that it's going to be into a trial class and then going into recurring memberships, not an evaluation there. And realize that programming is a time suck. Programming takes a lot of energy and effort, not only for adults, but even more for kids. And for me, that's because you have to create 2 or 3 class plans for those kids, especially the younger ones, in case one stops working, right? You can point and shift to the other one. So make sure that you push that over to your director, or you buy it from a program like Parisi. Questions, guys? Anything?
Okay. Well, guys, who here on this call currently has a kids program? Just throwing that out there. I see one hand. Just put your hand up, or so many of you do. And just as a group, and who here is looking to start a kids program and just came on this call looking for more information? Okay, maybe that was maybe there was like one or two hands. Okay, a couple hands. So for those of you who have a kids programming, would anyone mind sharing like what's been a big challenge for them? Or is everything like awesome? Because Daniel, you got a great setup going on, and you know, I know today's call was a lot about metrics, but I think one of the challenges, and I've experienced this myself, is where you put a lot of effort into a program and you just end up here. And at the end of the day, in order to build it to support more people and families, to me, it needs to be able to make money so that you can pay coaches and staff. But I see a couple hands up. I see Jason. Did you want to share?
I have a couple of questions slash I guess where we're stuck is we're newly open as of last fall, and we had tried out a couple of sessions of a Kid Fit, and it was fantastically successful. There was such interest. Where we struggle is staffing for coaches, right? Our adult coaches don't necessarily have the interest in doing that. And then we're a nice new facility, but we have single space. We probably have, I don't know, 2,000, 2,400 square feet of floor space, but it's just one. We don't have an additional place to run that. So therefore we run into some sort of scheduling issue. And then the weekend would be the logical time, or right after school before the adults start. But any insight as far as how to be creative with that schedule, when seems to work best, and then how to gain involvement or recruitment as far as the coaches go? Obviously that's a big sell, that the charisma, the engagement for a kids coach.
I'll let Betsy and Wendy take this because they run all of that.
Yeah, I was shaking my head because what you just said is it's the same problem we have. We actually still currently have the problem of getting people who, well, there's two different people. They say, oh, no, I'm not good with kids. I'm not good with kids. Mm-hmm. Or I don't think I want to do kids, right? They're afraid of it. We get that too. And honestly, it was just me for a while. I was the only coach. I was running everything and coaching everything, and it's just not possible. And so then what I kind of did is you probe around. Betsy can talk more about how she does Indeed and stuff like that. But it's more about taking a couple of your adult coaches who showed a little bit of interest. They're kind of like, I don't know, and convincing them that like it's not as scary as it sounds. Get them to come shadow a class, get them to interact with the kids, especially if it's an adult coach that is very outgoing, that's very, it's very fun and loud and likes to be silly. Like that's the kind of coach you want to try to convince that they actually could be really good at it if they're willing to give it a shot. I actually did that with two people. I got two people to be like, all right, this isn't so bad. I thought it was a lot scarier than this. And then there are two other people who tried it and was like, nope, I want nothing to do with this. So staffing and getting coaches is 100% my biggest problem. Is I have all of these kids and I want all these classes, but I am one person and I cannot be everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's my first suggestion, just from an internal perspective, is to take a look at the one or two coaches that in your mind would be good at it, even if they don't think that they are, and have them shadow, have them just come and help for a day, not actually be in charge, but just get them to see what it's actually like. Because I got to tell you, my little kids class is like my favorite class of the day. It's my favorite class of the week.
Yeah.
And then scheduling, the biggest success I've found, especially with younger kids, is that the weekends are very good. I don't know what your weekend adult classes are like. In ours, we have 2 classes in the morning on Saturday and sometimes 2 on Sunday. And honestly, I then run a kids class right after that adult class. And I have a lot of the adults that either bring their kids with them to their class and they stay, or the adult goes back and comes back. And that is my biggest class, absolutely my biggest class. And then I run teens on Sunday, because what I said at the beginning about running into times with school getting out, you also have to be worried about bus times. Sometimes the school might get out early, but their bus system doesn't get the kids home till a certain time. So I always have a Sunday class too, or a Saturday class, depending on your availability, because that's my biggest teens class is my Sunday class, because they can almost always be.
I was actually interested in talking. We're right in the center of town, and I'd love to talk to the school and figure out which bus comes by and just try that as well.
I was gonna say, you can actually call because I'm a teacher, I know this. You
Yeah.
can call the school district main office and ask them, or ask one of the adults in your adult program. They have kids probably in the school system there, and just say, hey, what time do your kids get home? Hey, what time does school get out? Hey, like just use that as your source of information for that. Because that's honestly, and that's where the open communication. I have parents email me all the time. Oh, hey, just so you know, buses don't get home until this time. And they feel comfortable telling me that. I'm like, oh, okay, then I guess that class time isn't going to work. Let's try this.
And for like during the week, Wendy, like during the week class times, it's different at each of our locations based on bus schedule, which is so funny because we're not that far away, but we are in different school districts. So we will have 3:30 will work at one location before our 4:30 class. And then in the other one, we have to go to like 7:30 or 6:30 p.m., depending on what our adult schedule is. And we run our adult schedule pretty lean and mean so that we have high occupancy in those adult classes, which then creates a little bit more flexibility in the evenings for us.
Okay. So actually, you just made me think of two questions. As far as busing, if I had kids get off the bus, is there any liability pitfalls I'd want to worry about? And how late would you go in the evening with maybe teens? Would you run a 7:20 class or a 7:30 class? Is that crazy?
So you can. It depends on the families, and it depends on the area. Like kids who have after club sports, the prime time is 6:30. We run a 6:30 teens in one of our locations, and parents are very happy with the 6:30 because they're home by 7:30. They still have time to get their homework done. 7:30 is fine. I definitely wouldn't go past 7:30. But again, like some of these kids have practices that start at 8:30 in some of their sports. Right. So there are some of the athletic kids that do that. But if your primary target is those kids who parents just want them to get off the couch and not play video games all day, they're not going to want them out at 7:30 to 8:30 at night. So you just have to, that's where the weekend classes. I have lots and lots of kids who are in my Sundays class, and that's the one class they come a week.
Okay.
Because their parents want them there, they want them to be active, they want them to learn how to move, but they don't want the commitment during the week.
Gotcha. Okay, that's
Jason, we've tried popping teams directly. No, go ahead, Danielle.
I was just going to say, what we haven't mentioned yet is that I only run 45-minute classes for the kids. They are not hours. And that is because of attention span. Yeah. That is because of time. One of the reasons we did that was because I could fit 2 kids classes in before an adult class and with a half hour to spare. So 45 minutes is plenty for definitely younger kids, definitely the middle kids, but even the teens as well.
And really quickly, it also, Wendy does an overlap at one of our locations where is it like the kids class, 30 minutes of the kids class will overlap with the beginning of the teens class so that you can get a mentorship interaction, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Jason, we tried putting the teens.
Also, to just piggyback off of Jason's question with staffing, and now you have this person who might not have any sort of credentials. And I just wanted to share with you all, there have been some changes to using the CrossFit Kids name and coaching and what the requirements are like. And so to speak to that, currently right now, you don't need a CrossFit Kids certification to coach kids. But what you do need to coach kids, hands down, using if you're running CrossFit Kids classes, is a CrossFit Level 1 cert. There is the CrossFit Kids online course, which I've done, and you get a certificate of attendance if you don't have a CrossFit Level 1, and then you can change that to a certificate of completion. It's a great resource. The CrossFit Kids, just to give you guys some information, because someone had asked in the chat, it's now shifted to an online format. It is a 2-day webinar going from, the hours will vary and the time zone will vary, but the one that's coming up in August is 8:30 to 2:30. But it's 2 days, and you'll see about 1 to 2 courses posted a month. And yeah, I was gonna add that. Also, the one thing to piggyback, you can arrange for a private course. So if you're looking for something a little bit more specific, I want to focus on team programming or at an elementary school. If you email seminars@crossfit.com, that's something that they could also set up. But I'm going to do a follow-up just so that I can provide you all on this call with that information, because there are course dates there. I don't have any information if they're going to bring that back in person, but feel free to reach out to me.
So I took the kids course that was the online webinar, and it was phenomenal. The biggest thing that I got out of it that was super beneficial to me was programming. What do I program? They basically give you so many weeks of actual programming per level so that you can get a handle on what's developmentally appropriate for that age group. That was the biggest thing I took away from that, as well as just getting into like, what does a kids program look like? The other thing I am going to throw out there, just as a teacher, I don't think it's a CrossFit requirement, but if you're going to work with younger kids, especially the 5 to 10 age range, I would say even teens, is that if you're going to have an adult coach in the gym alone with them, you might want to consider having your clearances, your FBI, your child abuse and that kind of stuff, clearances for that coach, just as a CYA, just to keep yourself covered. Just a thought. I have it, and I have my coaches have it.
Jason, don't be scared to go outside the gym and advertise. We don't pay for Indeed postings. I asked Betsy here to find those links and put them in, but we interview 2 to 3 coaches a week for our adults, but also for our kids and performance. Whether we need them or not, we interview because it just gets us better at picking the right candidate.
And do you hire specifically for the kids coach? I mean, right. I mean, when you interview, I'm looking for just a kids coach. Do you just want to do that? I guess, so thinking about the adult classes, huge that our coaches are part of the community. So if I go outside, I feel like I face that barrier. Now I'm bringing somebody that's not in our community into our community and does that make sense where I sort of struggle?
Yep, it does. We hear that from a lot of affiliates that we work with. Again, what we find is that your communities want the best for you, right? They want you to be successful. They want you to have successful programs. And so they're going to welcome that person in just like they're going to welcome in a new athlete. We have a specific hiring process for the adults that allows our clients to get feedback, and they actually become a yes or no, right? As far as the kids are concerned, setting the expectation up front with that role description of saying, here's the role description. You will be coaching kids X amount of classes, even if it's part-time. Shockingly, we've had a ton of leads lately from coaches that just want $30 an hour to come and coach kids classes, and they interview them and see if they're the right fit.
And these are coaches that have an L1 already and they're just coaching elsewhere or haven't been coaching elsewhere?
Yeah, they're coaching elsewhere, or they're coming in for the performance side of things.
Sorry for interrupting, Daniel, but if you have a university near you that has an exercise science program, that's also a place to reach out to and share like your job posting. Because there's a lot of college graduates in exercise science specifically that are looking for just to get into the industry. I meet with a lot of them every week who like don't even know where to start.
And they would have to train up, right? I mean, they'd have to do the L1, but you can do it online. Okay.
They can be moldable, but they do require more time in terms of leadership.
Right. Okay. That's
now,
great insight.
they can, according to the affiliate, Danielle, you can correct me if I'm incorrect here, but I believe that that shadowing process, they can lead classes as long as there's an L1 there.
Correct.
Is that true?
Right. While they're running through. So, whatever that process looks like for you, right? You can also call it something totally different. And it's not CrossFit. Never, they don't have to have the CrossFit cert. Typically insurances say that you have to be certified, but they don't even label out what that means.
Right.
There's no definition on it.
One thing I would add though is depending on how you set up your coaching team's CPR credentials, I've always customarily have done the kids and also the AED. And nowadays they usually lump that together.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of online courses that don't necessarily do that. So if you are going to be running a kids program, just make sure you dot your I's, cross your T's with that. And then also speaking to that too, and I mean, this might be getting in the weeds, but in terms of an emergency card or photo release, that's something that I would make sure to tag on to your onboarding process of kids. There is a template in the kids guide. I keep referring to this kids online course guide, but it is there. You can read it. Preparing for my level 3, I read it from front to back as well. So it is out there. All of the online coursework you can download and use as you need to use. So
I did post an example. This is just like a blank like job description that I use for youth, and then I edit the compensation based on what the business needs. So right now it's full-time, but you could totally make it part-time if you wanted.
These ladies have perfected job postings to the point where, I'm not joking, 2 to 3 interviews a week of like, and I would say probably a month, they're finding 2 to 3 rock stars a month, like just absolute rock stars that we don't have space for across 10 locations, that we want to create space for.
Anyone else have any questions? I know we're at about 11:04, but there's a lot of rabbit holes we can go down. And when I had initially chatted with Dan, I was like, I wanted him to focus on what a sustainable program looks like. I have one question, but I don't want to hold you guys up. And this would go out to Dan. Okay, if no one's going to take that, I've had a lot of success, Jason. I had a really tough space, and when I found that the evening time wasn't ideal, and then the earlier time coincided with like I had a very huge 4 p.m. class, so it really left very little wiggle space. So I really focused on in terms of going back to Dan's seasonal, but this might be different from how you separate performance. And so I had a lot of contracts set up through different sport teams where it was more conducive for them to train on the weekend, and it was in their off season for say 2 months. But Dan, could you speak to that, like in terms of your contracts with sports teams? And I look at this too, for those of you who are running your kids programs, as lead generation or prospecting, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole that we try not to go down.
Okay.
It's a time suck. It takes forever to massage that relationship, to get the board to approve you, and then the board director suggests to someone else and they want to go to their personal trainer or buddy or whatever. We find that we are more financially successful in the performance market selling these small groups at $400 a month, into there. Now, it does occasionally lead the teams, but it's not something that we pursue, right? We don't pursue it as a way to pay the bills at all. And of course, we don't set our finances up, as you guys saw, based on we have to hit these numbers to pay the bills. It's all supplementary. The way the compensation is set up is so that we're never out of pocket on it. Yeah, the more I get into this, and I'm about to hit 20 years in the fitness sector, the more I get into this, the more I begin to see that we have really successful franchises out there in the micro gym market, whether they're Metabolic, F45, Orange Theory. I got my start 18 years ago at D1 Sports Training out of Nashville as employee number 3, which is now just sold for like over 50 million. It's franchising all over the place. What we find is that they do one thing really, really well, right? Think about Orange Theory. You come in, you do a class, you're gone, right? That's it. They do adults group training really, really well. Same thing with Metabolic. And that allows them to succeed. And if you look at the numbers on those across the country compared to the CrossFit affiliates, we're in some big business groups with some CrossFit affiliates and adult group training, and then the ones that we lead as well. They're like double ours. They're double our financial numbers. And it's because they're doing one thing and they're doing it really, really well. They're not doing personal training. They don't have their buddy renting space to do personal training. They're not doing a kids program. They're not doing like all of these things. So my suggestion would be that if you're going to do this, go find someone to run it for you. Go find someone to do that and focus on the one thing doing it really well.
Yeah, that I agree. I for all of you on this call, one of the things that I'm refocusing on in my role is meeting with owners, potential owners when they're thinking about the process of affiliation. And my one big piece of advice is, if you're all about group classes, which you obviously are coming in as you're wanting to start the CrossFit affiliate, and focus on that one thing, just like Daniel said. Jason, I think we even chatted about this. I think it was you. It was someone who I was like, don't start a kids programming yet. But I think what is unique about our community is that we're all very passion driven. We want to make an impact and give back. And, you know, the purpose of these calls is I want you to be a healthy affiliate, which means that you need to be above the red and you need to be generating revenue to stay afloat. And so with that said, I hope that you had some takeaways from this. I want to make sure too that you guys feel comfortable reaching out to me directly. If I don't have an answer to your question, I will connect you with someone, whether it's someone in the community or someone who's in another part of HQ, to get you that information. That's why I'm here. So Dan, Wendy, thank you very much. Betsy, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to follow up with an email, if it's all right, Daniel, to put your presentation link, and then also some information about the kids program, just so you have the upcoming schedule right in front of you, and any other resources I can think of that would help you out, guys. So.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out. All Betsy and Wendy and we and our managing partners do every week is just give away free stuff. Like, here's the role description. Here's our pricing structure. Here's how we did this, this, and this, and this, and this. You know, and we just give it away. So don't hesitate to email one of us and just ask.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Have a nice rest of your week, and hope to be in touch with you all soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.